Welcome to Abandoned Albums, the documentary podcast. Each week, our intrepid group of researchers and music archivists dig through the record crates of the world, finding those albums that may have been lost over time. If a new artist is discovered along the way, that's all the better. Using a patent-pending algorithm and spirited debate, we pick one album to discuss. Once that is settled, we will invite the artists to Thunderlove Studio to chat with your host, Keith R. Higgins. When we're lucky, they say yes. Our mission with Abandoned Albums is simple: to make sure artists' recorded work remains, or in some cases, lands on, the cultural radar. We invite you to sit back and relax. Thank you for joining us.
Where are you guys? It's 9 p.m. where I am.
Yeah, us too. We're in New York.
Oh, okay. I'm in Connecticut.
Yeah, okay. Close.
We're neighbors.
We're neighbors. Well, welcome, Amanda and Mike from Bad Mary. It's you, Amanda, on vocals. It's Mike on bass. Now, if I have my research correct, it's your father, Amanda, Bill, on drums.
That is correct, yes.
And then your old professor, David Henderson, on guitar.
That is also correct, yes.
Okay, now, but we're not even done yet. You guys are married.
Yes.
What?
Yeah, I know. Fooled you. Whoops.
That is a lot of energy packed into 4 people.
Oh, it certainly is.
First of all, first questions first. What exactly is David a professor of?
So David was my professor at Hofstra University. He's still a professor at Hofstra University in the Department of Drama and Dance, but he's on the technical side of it. So when I was a student, he wasn't, but he was the chair of the department at one point.
He's also a masterful designer. So pretty much all of our graphics, all of the art that we use for the band has been designed by David. He directs all of our music videos. Wow. And he conceptualizes all of them. And yeah, so he's a really just all around talented guy
who happens to play guitar.
Yeah, he plays
quite well, actually. He plays
well. Yes, very well. So yeah, it's one of those things where, it's a pretty great.
It's a wild lineup. That's the first thing is like, okay, so how did this happen? That's the first question we get a lot.
Come up and see me sometime. Anytime. The sooner the better.
David is still a professor at Hofstra. We all kind of started at Hofstra. That's the catalyst for all 4 of us. So when I was a student there, my dad was actually also a student there.
Oh, wow.
His last semester on campus was my first semester on campus. And a lot of my friends knew him. So I would be walking to my next class, see a group of my friends, and he'd be in the center of it. And I'd be like, oh, you guys are just hanging out with me to get to my dad. Because my dad's awesome. And that's why I'm in a band with him for as long. We get along great. But we started as kind of a party band for the drama department. So we were in it. We had a different drummer who's still very close friends with us, Rory Levin, who comes up in some of our lyrics in some of our songs. So she's a real person. Hi, Rory. David, and then our other friend, Andrew. And we were a party band for the drama department parties. We played covers. We there were 2 or 3 events throughout the year that we did. David still does this on campus, and that band is David and the Hendersons, and there's a current group of students that is in that. Yeah,
it's like a revolving door.
It's a revolving door. There's a chart of it started I don't know how many years ago, and there's a graph of, okay, this person was in it for this many years on vocals and guitar, but then they moved to bass, and then this person joined. So there's a whole running, it's a tradition at this point, and we started as an iteration of that. And the year that we kind of all graduated, we were all staying local. That doesn't always happen. So we started playing cover gigs in local spots. And Rory ended up getting an internship in Disney World. So she relocated. Andrew ended up moving into the city and doing other stuff. So Mike hopped on bass. He was on rhythm and guitar at first. Mm-hmm. And we wanted to keep playing. And I was like, I know a guy that plays drums. Maybe he'll be interested. And it was my dad. Uh-huh. So that was the happenstance of how the 4 of us got together. And since then, we just keep going. And it's been such a wild ride.
Given the dynamics of the band, there's the potential for a lot of different types of conflict, because there's a husband and wife conflict, there's the father-daughter conflict, potentially, there's the creative conflict. I got to imagine it's intense. How do you guys deal with that?
I think we get through all of those possible like conflicts or creative differences. Sometimes we work through them. We write everything together. We really do work together, and it's because it was almost like a family. Like it I don't know, it is like a weird family band. I feel very much like David and his family have like adopted me into their family as much as like in my head like he's part of my family. So I don't know, we get through all of those possible things and laugh about it, you know.
Yeah.
There hasn't been that, and I don't take that for granted, because I have heard that story so many times of this one said this or that one said that, or a band was put together and maybe there were clashing personalities and it doesn't always work out.
Right.
So I feel very lucky to be able to spend this time with these people from that happenstance of how it all came together, and we just keep going.
You have that spot at the beginning when a group first starts where you're trying to feel everything out, trying to figure out how everyone operates. And then you get to a point where you're really comfortable with each other, but you could still easily get upset by things. I think we're at the point where we know how each of us work. We know which each of us is good at. And when conflict does come up, I think I'm not good at hiding my feelings. I'm very vocal up front about everything. And there's an honesty to that. And I think that we have fun with it. I'm very rarely mad at the people in the band. We're, usually, and we discuss this as a band all the time, it's funny, it's sometimes things that are the most frustrating about being in the band are all the outside stuff, right? that upsets you. And there are times where I'll be mad at rehearsal and I'll say to the band, I wish I could be mad at you folks, because that would be so easy. Being angry with like,
I don't want you to be mad at me.
Yeah, but you know what I mean? It's almost easier. So I think we all know where we're all coming from. We have an understanding of each other's personalities. We're open about how we feel about things when stuff comes up. And really, we do have fun with it. We're making music and we're doing this, at the base level. The base level here is to have fun. Right. And we want to make music that is fun for us to perform. That's fun for us to record. And that's fun for us to share with people. So in the end, we try never to get away from the idea of what we're doing is fun and what we're supposed to be doing is fun.
We live stream every week, and there are times where like I do like throw my hands up in the air and just walk off, and it's because David has dogs in his house, so I'm like, I'll give you guys a minute, I'm just gonna go play with the dogs. So whenever I leave now, they've reverted to playing ZZ Top, and then I'll come back and it's like, did we just become a ZZ Top cover band since I've been gone?
That's our threat to Amanda.
If I leave, they're like, okay,
she does leave, we're turning into a ZZ Top tribute band.
That's awesome.
But in the end, I think we just kind of we're having a good time, we're having a good time, and nothing is ever really that.
Well, whenever we collectively, because there have been times where we've come together and have been exhausted also, because like it's a grind. There's a lot of work that goes into it, and it can sometimes the work part overweighs the fun part. And whenever we collectively feel like, okay, what are we doing? We make some kind of change.
Do you guys divide some of that work up?
We each kind of have our platform.
And then we'll kind of like check in on the other ones.
Yeah. So like, I'll handle the email list. David will handle finding, working to find new followers, and he'll work on some of the artistic stuff.
Instagram is usually me a lot. So like if we're going live on Instagram or something, it's usually from like my phone or my perspective. We do that, right? Like if we were playing a show, like I'll usually pop on live or put it in the corner. So we don't always, it's fun.
Yeah.
It's been fun. And but yeah, that's me. So if you message us on Instagram, it's not always me, but it's usually me.
Yeah. And that's kind of how we kind of operate, putting the we want with the camera in the corner of the stage, it's part of the whole bringing people into the fun, because not everyone that can see us lives close enough to come to the shows.
It started as a shtick.
Yeah,
I want to say like it started as a shtick during the Itch. I didn't think anybody would really tune into or care about, and has turned into something like really fun, and has kind of made me pull my my Instagram filters or my walls down a little bit because like I have no idea what it looks like, and I just posted out, and it took a second to be like okay with it, but I'm like, no, that's part of the fun too. Is here's a little window in time. It's not edited. Here you go.
Yeah.
From the inception of the band through marketing, through what you're doing with Twitch and all of that sort of stuff, it's just sort of growing on its own.
Yeah, we're
Just do what we can. We've just kept doing what we can.
Yeah, and we want to be ourselves. You know, we're not trying to we're not playing characters or anything like that. It's very much us.
I think that comes through for what it's worth.
That's good. You know, that's good to know because you never know, right? You never know how you're viewed. So I appreciate that. And it's one of those things where it's like we always want to kind of be organically ourselves. Yeah, maybe it's organically ourselves on 11, right, as opposed to us at 5 or 6, but it's that's kind of how we like to perform, and our method or our methodology to performance is not only just us performing, but it's also being organic with the audience in the room and making sure that if everyone in the room, or as many people as possible in the room that are engaged, are having a good time, but are also kind of in on it, right? It's kind of like this big kind of party vibe that we're going for.
It's a big conversation.
Yeah,
a lot of the time.
Response.
Let me ask you about your name, Bad Mary. Why? How?
We were David and the Hendersons, so we were that, and then
I love that name. I gotta tell you, I just love that.
I think there's still a Facebook group for
There
them.
is a Facebook group. David made, like Amanda said, he made like this big chart that shows who was in the band when and what instruments
like color coded.
It's very technical. But yeah, we were David and the Hendersons, and then when we decided to start playing more outside of Hofstra and doing our own thing, we called ourselves Madam X for a few years. But then when we started to write original music, which is a decision David and I came to when we were both kind of ready for it, we were like, okay, we're gonna have to change the name because Madam X is like another couple of bands. It's a movie. It's a club. It's a bunch of stuff. Mm-hmm. We searched. We kind of worked on band names for a very long time. And
what's the best game ever?
Yeah,
also
it's terrible.
So it's like it's a good band name.
So we have a Facebook chat, and this Facebook chat is 12 or 13 years long at this point, and for probably about a month we would spit a name out, search the internet, spit a name out, search the internet, see if we liked it, search the internet,
see if it was
everything was taken.
And everything, we couldn't be too complicated.
Yeah. So like you want it to be understandable. You want it to represent what our vibe is about. Mm-hmm. And we wanted it to be fun and punchy, and you be able to understand it if someone said it.
That's the a huge important thing at a show, because we see bands all the time. If we're playing some place we haven't played, we'll be on a bill with like a couple other bands that we haven't met yet, or we might have met online. And I'm like, what is their name? And they maybe say it once during the set, and then it doesn't get brought up. And then when it does, it's this long name that I'm like, I want to write it down and remember I need to follow it right now, or I'm not where. And that name is really, you want to make it easy for people to hang on to.
Yeah, you want to make it easy for them to say it. So David threw the name out at us at like 6 o'clock in the morning, and I liked it right away. And
I was very grumpy when
I'd woken Amanda up saying, I really think this is a good name. And she just,
I think I was like working nights at that point too. And I was like, late. Wyatt, this is not a wake up time.
Half asleep. And, but later on that day, she kind of came around to it.
In a big way. I really did. In a big way,
obviously. It's been our name for like 11 years. But it's one of those things where, does it mean anything? No. It's just a couple words David mashed together. He drew the logos and all that stuff, and it all came out pretty good.
There's become like a mythos, though. Like, how bad is Mary? And I'm always like, she's the worst. Oh my gosh, she's like, just blame everything. She's so bad. So bad. And then sometimes that's good though.
Yeah.
So depending on the situation, Mary,
and then,
she figures it out.
Because of that, naturally, most people think Amanda's name is Mary. So we go there from there. It's all part of the whole thing. It starts a conversation, and it's kind of.
At first I was like, no, that's not my name. That's the band. I'm like, I don't not respond to it, but I will be like, no, I'm not Mary. I'm Amanda. But if somebody says Mary, I'm not like,
not immediately upset anymore.
I'm just kind of like, thank you for listening. Cause like you knew that. Thank you for being here. Like, I'm not going to get mad at the wrong name.
So no, it was kind of like this thing. And at the end of that Facebook chat, we finally came to it. We did everything we could, we trademarked it and all that stuff, and started hitting the ground running. So
It's a great name.
thank you.
It's easy to remember. It's not like some bands. I'm like, what the fuck is that?
And
Yeah,
there's a parentheses.
And I'll
I
never.
do love a parentheses.
Yeah.
But
Now, Bad Mary, you guys have been very prolific in your short time together.
Mm.
We've got Better Days from 2014,
Mhm.
Killing Dinosaurs in 2016. We Could Have Saved the World in 2016, Glitter Bomb. Now, in 2019, you delivered The Return of Space Girl, a 33-minute punk rock space opera with a movie. I'm going to come back to that because that was pretty fun. And then in 2022, you guys put your spin on some classic rock songs with the release of Rock and Roll Classics Volume 6 and 7, which begs the question, is there a 1 through 5? I'm sure you've been asked that many times.
with that, we were kind of like, okay, where did we leave off? And we counted like our releases, and we're like, okay, we're at our volume 6, so we're just gonna start with that. I think that's.
And I think it was just nonsense. Sadly, there is no 1 through 5, but that's the mystery of it.
But there, I mean, we could be releasing backwards. I don't.
You never know.
We could always go back in time. Back to the Future is my favorite movie. We could always go back in time.
We could do that. And yeah, you know, we did the cover records, the cover EPs, because COVID happened, and we
What?
had a couple of
What?
years off. Yeah, I know we lost all that time, and we used the cover tunes as a way to kind of get back into the groove, and being like, you know what, let's just put out 2 cover EPs. We'll have fun with it.
We hadn't recorded in so long.
Yeah,
like,
we hadn't been
4
3 years.
Mike and I were doing live acoustic streams from here.
Yeah.
For like the whole entirety of it until they were kind of like being like, okay, you can get together so
Yeah,
we were
got together
super
a few
careful.
times. Yeah, it was tough.
So that was after Space Girl, which was this like huge project, I think, for us.
It was.
Going from that into 2020, which was kind of like okay, let's figure out a different reroute, do something else, keep the gears. Everybody was like treading water for a bit, and that was the first like, okay, let's tiptoe back to the studio and like crack the knuckles and get back to what we're used to doing. And that, I think, really turned the gears for supporting us like with the original stuff that's like that. We needed that to get kind of like.
And that's the first time we also recorded to a click track.
Oh, okay.
So that's something we started doing with that record. And it was so weird because we were riding this incredible wave in 2019 with the release of The Return of Space Girl. We had this really incredible local scene building up. We had just come back from Japan. We were in Japan in August of 2019. The record releases in November. We played these shows in November, December, and January.
We were getting airplay at the time.
Getting big, radio play and all that stuff. And then like we were supposed to have this big gig in March on March 13th. And then March 12th, it was like, guys, you can't do this anymore. And it deflated a little bit, but having those covers, like knowing like, hey, this is what we're going to work on. It was exciting to kind of like get back into it and work on stuff again.
With music we already knew.
Yes.
But, so it like we could make something, we could create something while we were trying to like get back to writing original stuff again.
And then after that, that really does spark, because after a while, we were like, we had recorded like maybe like 8 or 9 of the 12 covers, and we were like, I don't want to do this anymore. Can we write original stuff again? So that's.
I never said I never want to do this. I love doing the Go-Go's.
I'm just saying,
we did sing the Go-Go songs. I
and
understand.
Then we started writing original stuff probably in 2022.
I'm the one that's always said like, hey, we should cover this. Hey, this would be a fun cover.
It's fun.
Now, how did you come up with "Don't You Want Me," which is one of my favorite songs of all time? I think it's just a wonderful song.
We used to do "Don't You Want Me" when we were a cover band.
That was like
that was one of the songs we used to do.
David and the Hendersons? Did we do that in that, or was it Madam
No,
X?
I think we did that afterward. I think we might have done that as Madam X. Either way, we started to we played that when we were a cover band, and it was one of those things like new wave was always kind of in the conversation of what we were doing. And I guess that's considered new wave, right? Am I wrong? Am I right?
No, you're right. Yeah.
Yeah. So
I love new wave.
a lot of new wave music is always kind of floating around everything we do. And since we're drawing a lot of inspiration and influence from, the late 1970s, New York City, bands like Blondie and stuff like that as well, new wave is always there. David grew up in England, so he was kind of there for the whole, like the end of the beginning of the English punk thing and English new wave and stuff like that. And having, Amanda and I doing kind of dual vocals back and forth, that was kind of a no-brainer for us. And we always liked that song, but we really wanted to lay down on that riff.
I like when also you get to hop in more on vocals. It's fun, like singing back and forth with you.
Yeah. So that was a song that we had done forever, and we're like, we should record it. And we did.
And then we did a video for that was actually like David walked backwards the whole entire time, and we're walking down a sidewalk on a street by a music school that I used to teach at pre-pandemic, and where he's doing a single shot walking backwards. My dad is walking behind him to make sure that David doesn't get hit by a car like walking across the street, because we like cross over full streets, and it's like one shot of like us just like kind of like in a fight, not looking at each other, but like we never know exactly what they're going to look like. David always has some idea, and we're just like, okay, we're going to meet at this place at this time, wear this color, don't wear this color, I got it. And like we just show up, and he just is like, okay, this is what we're going to do.
Awesome.
I love when people bring that song up, so thank you.
Yeah, actually that's a song we should probably play live.
We should play that more.
Yeah, I really have a good time with that one.
I struggle with labels to music, but
there's so many.
One website described Bad Mary as New York-based glam punk, in particular in relation to the song It's All Trash. I don't know what that means, glam punk. How would you guys describe your music to someone who's never heard it before?
That's such a good question. I'm serious. That's good, because it's
my initial image, because you said it's all trash, is just like, it's kind of like a trash bag covered in glitter, like being thrown through the air, followed by a rainbow, but also wearing Doc Martens. Like, I don't really know how to explain.
That's not bad. I like the Doc Marten touch.
Yeah. We always got to get some boots. I always, people ask us like, what's your style? What's your type of music? And
it's hard.
It's hard to.
And we have friends too that we're all kind of like.
Yeah. A lot of times it's like I think we're definitely classic punk influenced for sure. There's definitely a classic punk rock energy to it. Classic Lower East Side, New York City kind of energy to it. It's melodic. It's but also at the same time it's fun and it's danceable, and it's. I think the glam comes in with kind of like the style. There's a lot of glitter and stuff we wear. David has a big pink fuzzy strap.
Yep.
Okay.
I really like those kind of also like glam New York bands like Kiss, and like when we were recording It's All Trash, the vocals part to it, we were watching Peacemaker. Yeah. And that theme song, The Wigwam, and I was like, I love that vocal effect where it's just like layered and it feels huge, and I was like, I want to do something like that. And do you want to it doesn't sound like, but that's what I had in my head of like that. They were listening to a lot of that. It's like, do you really want to taste that?
Yeah, do you want to taste it, I believe is the name of the song. And yeah, it's I think in general, we're playing, fast and loud rock and roll music. It's punchy, it's cheeky. Our lyrics are sort of sarcastic and sort of bratty, and it's kind of got that kind of energy to it. It's kind of like this, we've been described as,
it's still melodic, but at the same time it's like
we've been described as a lot of things by a lot of different people, and
depending on the show we're on also. It like, because sometimes we'll get, especially when we were first starting out, we would get put on a bill with like super hardcore bands, and then sometimes that would change the songs that we chose, because we do have songs that like tend to go harder, but then that crowd would be like, oh, you remind me of like this group, and then we would get put on something that was more like, oh, this is like a ska show, and we're like kind of the fun punk like friends in it, so we'd play maybe a different set, and we would get a totally different feedback from that, but they're still our songs, and when we play them together they fit together. So it's it's a Venn diagram. And I think that's kind of all music these days, is like everything, there's so much out. So it's a soup, and it's impossible not to be like, oh, I like that bit from that one song from maybe a classical like movie score that you've heard. And it's a just underlying thing that you're now listening to, like, oh, I like that K-pop tune over there, but you're a rock band. And like you can pull from or get influenced by anything. And that's allowed for so much genre bending that it's hard to, it is a hard and loaded question, but you have to come up with an answer, and you have to figure out something of what you are to explain to people.
Yeah.
I hear the echoes of anarchy that's inherent in punk, along with that new wave sort of ironic detachment.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
I love that.
That's my eggheady sort
I
of
actually,
interpretation.
I
I
think
like
that's
that
really,
so
really
much.
cool. No, I think that's a really good way to go about it, and a really good way to say it, because yes,
Can you write that exact sentence down?
can you email that to me?
So
I will.
The other thing with that too, it's one of those things where, you know, we're all bringing different influences in. You know, I grew up listening to 90s punk rock, and because I grew up listening to 90s punk rock, I listened to a lot of 70s punk rock, because I would read a magazine, or, you know, get lucky enough to catch a show on whatever music station that was actually playing music at the time, whether it be MTV, VH1, Much Music, whatever. And you would see interviews with the bands, and they would talk about their favorite stuff and go back to the record store, listen to that. And that's where the core of my rock and roll influence comes from. I also love 80s heavy metal. You know, I'm a big Iron Maiden fan. I'm a big Judas Priest fan. I like early Metallica. I like that. I love like bands like the Misfits, who are like punky, but also kind of thrashy horror punk. But also, and I'm gonna out myself in this conversation, which I do all the time. A major draw and a major influence on my writing and my style of music is video game music. I grew up playing a lot of video games, and I think a lot of the composition that was coming out of some of this stuff, you know, I joke around that there's certain songs that I've written that wouldn't exist without Street Fighter 2. I probably wouldn't exist without Street Fighter 2 to some degree, in this way, shape, or form that I'm in right now, or, you know, Mega Man X or Final Fantasy or whatever. David grew up in England. He kind of, you know, big Queen fan, you know, loves bands like AC/DC too, and like that kind of like open kind of heaviness that AC/DC has. And also, you know, loved bands that love that whole English punk rock.
He loved Blondie also
loved
super into Blondie.
But, you know, loves bands like the Stranglers, right? And you know, stuff like that. I won't speak for Amanda. I'll let Amanda speak for herself on this one. Bill is like a musical library. You know, he's been playing drums
Since he was 3,
65 years, and he is an absolute beast. That his chops are unbelievable, but he knows everything. Bill could play jazz, and then he'll switch into heavy metal,
disco,
and then he could play disco, and then he could play straight up driving rock and roll. So what's great about that is when you give Bill a song, and like, Bill, I don't know what to do, I can't write drums, he'll come up with some incredible like combination of things. Like if you listen to our song Ninja, which has got this kind of offbeat kind of thing going on to it, he's doing almost like a James Brown kind of drum beat underneath that. And, you know, that's going to be on the new EP, where we recorded that for the new EP. And that's become one of our big songs that we play out. But like Bill will just straight drive it and hammer. And then sometimes he does some weird off tempo, off time stuff that's just like fits perfectly. So I think also part of our style and genre and sound, I think it is that multi-generational thing. But Amanda too has.
Yeah. Well, I was going to say, like, I grew up with my dad. You know, he was there.
A lot of people don't.
Yeah,
you know?
Yeah, no, totally.
And we shared, like, my dad's our drummer. He's been a drummer since he was 3. His mother, my grandmother, was a big band singer. His sister was a professional oboe player. She taught oboe her whole life. She was in the Maryland Symphony. She was
There's not much else you can do as a professional oboe player except
and then she was in the Maryland Symphony, and she was in she went to Juilliard. She was in the Navy band also as a civilian. So that was her life, was oboe. And then my dad was the drummer. My grandfather was a guitar player. It's just, it has been in my family. So when I was little, my aunt was at my house, and I think The Little Mermaid had like just come out. And of course I was like 2 and obsessed with it. So I'm sitting outside in like my kiddie pool singing along. And she was like, she's on pitch right now, so you should do something with that. So from when I was little, like my dad fostered music like immediately. And I grew up listening to a lot of what he listened to, not necessarily what was on the radio. If Blair Goodman, if you ever hear this, thank you for opening me up to any of the modern music that was coming out, because like Blink-182, Green Day, like all that in like 94, I know all of that because of you. Thank you, Blair. At home, we were listening to like Cream and like The Who and a lot of the Beatles and like a lot of like classic rock stuff. But he was always open to what I would bring home as I got older. But where we started working together was in musical theater. So that's my version of Mike's video games is musical theater. That's where I started singing. When I was a kid, he was in a band called Pipe Dreams, and the lead singer of Pipe Dreams worked at a community theater. I got enrolled in that program because that was kind of the outlet for if you wanted to sing and you were a kid, you would go to the chorus or you would go to the theater, and that was your group activity. And I loved it. And when I got older and started doing the shows, he started playing drums in the pit because he knew Gene that worked at the theater, and they were like, oh, we need a drummer, similarly to how we have a drummer. It's like, oh, no, I know a guy. In comes my dad. So since I was a kid, we've been working in this aspect together. And I gravitated naturally towards, and this should have told me something, the rock musicals. So everything can have a story to it, which is what Space Girl kind of is for all of us. And when we perform stuff like that, I take that to it. And that is why I cover myself in glitter and I wear whatever the heck I want. And I want to paint my face with dots on it sometimes and bright colors. So that's part of the glam part of it too. But there's always a story to tell, and you always need to know what you're singing about. And it might change every night. And that's the cool thing about music too. So I've just went on a long ass tangent, but that,
I'm glad you brought up Space Girl because I want to talk about this.
yes, segue.
I watched, beautiful segue. I watched it earlier today because I didn't know the movie existed. So I watched it, and wow, well done. Now, the song Space Girl that's on your first record.
Mm-hmm.
Have you always had the concept for this rock opera, whatever concept album, whatever we want to call it?
Yes.
Has this always been kicking around in your brain?
So
brains, I should say.
Yeah. So
it's a multi-step.
The thing with the return of Space Girl was, so I had written Space Girl before Bad Mary was a thing. One night I was working on the song and I was trying to figure out what it was about, and I was working on some idea, and it was a different idea at the time, but I changed the lyrics around and made it. I'm a big sci-fi guy. I like science fiction a lot. I like anime a lot. So it was one of those things where, that kind of comes through, I think, a little bit in some of my songwriting. And
lucky for us, we all like it too. So.
Yeah, it's good. Well, we'll spend 20 minutes in band practice talking about Dune. But so I had written Space Girl when the band wasn't together yet, and I had a couple of songs. I just wrote a couple of songs because I was coming up with some concept on my own. And then once we started writing original music as Bad Mary, I said to David, I'm like, I already have some songs, and he's like, cool, bring them in. Let's work on them. And I kind of reshopped the original song I'd written, and I moved it into Space Girl, which is ultimately, I realized much later in life after doing some CBT, some cognitive behavioral therapy.
Oh no, I'm familiar. Yes.
Yeah. Sorry, folks out there. That wasn't a reference to any drugs. I started engaging in some CBT and realized that a big problem I've had throughout my entire life has been being misunderstood and not understanding. And I realized that ultimately at the core of the Return of Space Girl, or the core of Space Girl, the song Space Girl, the problem there, the conflict there is about being misunderstood. That song's very important to me. And at that point, we were like, listen, it doesn't have to necessarily tell this complete story. We looked at the ELO record Time, and how time is not just about a straight line story. It's about all these things that kind of have this central theme to it. And we started writing songs about that. And ultimately it started to change to be about those things and be about the story of the Space Girl robot. But on top of that, it also became about social media addiction misinformation, things like that. And we wrote that record in like 2017, 2018 and put it out in 2019. So that was before COVID. So I feel like because of what we all have gone through over the last 4 years as a global collective, I think to us that record, it holds even more weight now.
You're leaving out the part also before COVID, like it's about social media addiction and the space robot, but also like the end of the world as we know it.
Yeah.
Like that's a huge part to leave out before like, oh, this happened before COVID. So coming out of that, even for us, I feel like the album has a different weight to it than if we were to have like, okay, we're back from Japan and now we're just going through the next year and boop, we've got this going and our next tour is getting planned and it all went full steam ahead as planned, as normal. No, the world kind of stopped after this.
Kind of imploded.
Yeah, it did. Yeah. It did a little bit. And I will say, to answer your question, was the idea always kicking around? Well, that song, the Space Girl song's been around for a long time.
Right.
The idea of the concept album was kind of sparked at that point, to where we took the idea of what Space Girl was doing and kind of stretched it out and had other concepts that flew in and worked along with the whole thing. We actually re-recorded Space Girl for that album. I think it's the credits on the movie. I think it's the credits. That
like
version.
The song in the album didn't fit with because I'll get to the movie. I love
the movie's a crazy that's a crazy story.
But because also like similar to Tommy, I think like the movie is slightly different than the album is slightly different than the stage show, but they're all technically telling the same story, but the medium changes. This doesn't make sense visually, so Space Girl's now at the end, not in the middle.
And David conceptualized the movie and did all the animation.
So that we did not know about that. We did not know about the movie
right away.
And
he was doing it.
So this is what he always makes music videos. The majority of our videos that are published were made by David. So one night, like we always do, Tuesdays, we go to David's house, studio's in the basement, we're about to stream. He goes, okay, guys, I want to show you something this week before we go live. So try to get here a little early. Okay, great. We go downstairs and he hits play on the opening of the album. So he has animated and we're like, oh, this is awesome. So we see the opening, the first song. The first song ends and then it goes into the second song and the video is still going. And we kind of all stopped and we were like, David, what are you doing? He goes, I'm going to do the whole thing.
Wow.
Yeah. So that was his goal, was to do the whole record. And it was his sabbatical project because David's a professor. So on his sabbatical, the goal of the sabbatical is to learn and to expand your knowledge base. And what he learned how to do over sabbatical that year was to animate, was to do 3D animation, which he now uses at the university for projections and set pieces and animations on the set. And he's already telling me about stuff that like has expanded from where he was when he first started using that for stage, and the stuff they're working on right now is really, really cool. But yeah, so that was a sabbatical project for him to learn and teach himself 3D animation, or using Animator or whatever programs. I forget the programs, but After Effects and all that stuff.
He did a lot in Procreate.
Yeah, Procreate and Photoshop and After Effects and all those programs. So yeah, and we're really happy about that. That movie was we're really proud of it. I mean, it
should be.
Thank you, and
it's bananas.
It is bananas.
I think I saw an Ex Machina poster in one scene.
Oh, I think so. Yeah, I think he did. He threw up some old movie posters, and I think
I love that.
Was it Venetia Fair or?
Yeah, so there's a song. Is Venetia Fair?
Or iRobot.
No, it's iRobot.
I think it's in the garage.
Yeah, it's in the garage. That's it.
Yeah, it's in the garage. So the girl working on the robot, building the robot, as time goes on, as she's been working on this robot her whole life, the sci-fi movie posters in the garage change to kind of tell you what year it's in. So it'll start with like Star Wars, and it'll move on to something else, and then at the end it's Ex Machina, because that's like towards the end. So it's
I saw her age, so I was like, all right with that. And then I saw Ex Machina. I'm like, oh, okay. Visit that.
Yeah. That got submitted to a bunch.
I still haven't seen all the Easter eggs.
Yeah,
also.
There's a lot. Yeah, you gotta sit down and watch it. You gotta look it out. You gotta pick them out. You gotta do that. The Leonardo DiCaprio point. So so yeah, like I got, David submitted it to a bunch of festivals, as an animated feature, and it did well. It did well at the festivals. Won a bunch of awards, and it won some awards for best original music, which to us is
Hey,
Yeah, we
the
were
icing
psyched
on the
about
cake.
those. I know David wanted all the animation awards, and he did get a bunch of like best short.
Oh
and
yeah, best
like all
animated
that.
short
But
and all that
whenever
stuff,
whenever
too.
we
So
got
it
the
was really
music
cool.
award, we were like, yes.
Yeah, really cool.
now you're re-recording
Yes.
the whole first record,
Oh, six
or
songs.
just part of it?
Six songs.
6 songs.
6 songs. Okay.
Pretty much the 6 songs that
There's a lot of songs that we still play that we started off and playing when we started, and that people still request constantly, that are still in our sets. And
Yeah.
when we recorded that first album, and I love Better Days, we very much were just figuring it out.
Yeah.
So there's songs on there that I love that we really wanted to kind of revisit and take what we've learned and the years of playing them and how they've grown into the same but a little different.
Yeah, you play a song live for 10 years and it does kind of shift, and it kind of changes, and it takes on a different energy. So what we wanted to do when we're recording these is we wanted to record them so that they were up to the level of the newer stuff we recorded in terms of a production standpoint. But also on top of that, we wanted to try to capture that kind of raw live energy of it all and bring those into the songs when we re-release them. And also a good way to celebrate the record being, over 10 years old at this point. And, we were doing Trash and Glamour, and I'm immensely proud of that EP. I really, really think that, like, I'm so happy with those songs and how they came out. And as we were working on that, I was just like, it'd be funny if we re-recorded like, a bunch of songs off Better Days and called it Better Days, and then put the second ER in parentheses.
Love a
And
parentheses.
David loves parentheses play. Like, that's like one of his favorite things. So he was in.
That's a peculiar thing to be
I'm
into.
here for a parentheses.
What do you know?
That's, some of our song titles were like a working title with an absurd spelling that by the end we're like, that's his name. We're not
Yep,
changing it.
yep.
Like we were joking around and it's
Yep.
like, that's his name. That's
So Mars Attacks being one of them, which is purposely spelled incorrectly.
that was a joke, and then it just never
Yes,
left.
and then we just
And
left it that
then
way.
we printed it.
Yeah.
And now it's spelled that way.
So yeah, so I figured, I was like, let's call it Better Days, and it would be funny because it's a cheeky thing, but it give us the opportunity to go back in and revisit those songs that we've been playing for a long time and share them with people.
I feel like I have been trying not to, but I feel like all of us have been like intentionally not really listening to the first album, because it's like, no, we know these songs. Like I've been also trying not to get in my head, because recording for me, I'm always like, that's the version, so that's the one. So I've gotten a lot better at it, but I've psyched myself out in past, and then have just gotten there like, just sing. You've sung the song 100,000,000 times. It's fine. So just trying to not listen to the original version, because I'm like, don't try to replicate that. It's something new. Don't think about it too much. And I love these songs because of that. Because we going into the studio on something like this is fun, and it takes that overthinking, I think, away from me. So this project has been really, really fun.
See, that was your first mistake, is that you're thinking.
I just turn it off. Just turn the brain off.
See, if you see, I don't think ever. And
You're doing okay.
I do all right.
You're doing great.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And when that comes out in April?
I believe the full EP should be out in June.
In June, okay.
Yeah,
cool.
So I think we might have a single in between.
You don't have a
March
date for
and
that
June
yet,
as well.
but that's the plan.
We'll see.
Awesome.
Now need open the pod bay doors, Hal.
I'm sorry, Dave. I'm afraid I can't do that.
What's the problem?
I think you know what the problem is just as well as I do.
What are you talking about, Hal?
This mission is too important for me to allow you to jeopardize it.
I don't know what you're talking about, Hal.
I'm going to try something different. I've never done this with anybody.
I love it.
Do you know who Lester Bangs is? I got a few years on you guys.
I'm actually not familiar.
He wrote for Cream, primarily Cream magazine.
Oh, okay, yeah.
He was played by Philip Seymour Hoffman in that movie, the Cameron Crowe movie about a band.
Oh, Almost Famous.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah. Okay, yes. No. I know who that
All
is.
right.
I love that
Now
movie. I know
now
exactly who you're talking
definitely
about.
know who it is.
Yep.
He's well known for his clever word play. So I said, what are some questions to ask Bad Mary in an interview in the voice of Lester Bangs?
Oh, this is cool. I like this a lot.
This is awesome.
So play along with me. Here we go. These are Lester Bangs in the voice of Lester Bangs. I don't know what he sounded like, so I won't try to do that. But rock and roll's been declared dead more times than I've been kicked out of bars. How does Bad Mary keep the corpse twitching?
Ooh, we just plugged it right into the electrical socket of the wall, turned that amp up to 11, covered it in glitter, put on some dancing shoes, and let it rip.
Yeah. Caffeine and rage.
That's a great combination. Next question. Every band says they're different. Cut the crap and tell me what actually makes Bad Mary stand out in a sea of mediocrity.
I mean, we're the first ones that will tell you that we're trash. So we've already like
I think part of it too is that, what helps us stand out is one, that family dynamic. I think the wild road show of it all, the packing up the station wagon and going and touring is kind of the vibe. That kind of vibe travels with us everywhere. But also I think too, what makes ours musically different is I think what we're doing is we're playing fairly simple songs. Songs that we really like to play and really like to perform. They're loud, they're fast, they're aggressive, they're cheeky, they're bratty. But at the same time, we do a lot of really, I don't want to say it's unique because I'm not sure if it's unique, but the vocal work is I think is something that for us is unique. Because a lot of folks say this, and this is not me quoting myself. This is bands that people will say it's at clubs and stuff like that. They're like, not a lot of bands make music like, in the style or whatever, similar to us. He goes, but very few of them have dual vocal lines almost on every song. So I think that's also part of it. And I think the fact that Amanda and I are married makes it click so much easier. And it just feels so natural. Like we know where the voices need to sit. And I think that also separates us as well.
I also sing the low part sometimes and people are like, wait, who's on what line? You're singing that.
I usually take the higher harmony for sure.
Wow.
I think also if people look at us and don't know our makeup, like I've seen okay, how did this happen? Like if they don't know we're married and my dad's my dad and David is my professor and we're all dressed different, wacky, carrying a bunch of different things and we walk in, it's like, who is this group?
It's that whole time machine thing.
You guys are on the upswing. So this is, again, in the voice of Lester Bangs. How do you navigate the noise of praise and criticism while keeping your artistic compass intact?
Don't read the comments too seriously. We did. When we first started and we're managing our social media ourselves, which we are, like you get us. Mm-hmm. So some people would message, and this was before I think people knew like, oh, there can be trolls and there can be bots and there can be anybody saying anything out there. So at first it was like you get kind of sensitive of people being like, you're trash, this is all garbage, you can't sing. And it's like, well, you're a robot and you also I look at what you're liking and I don't like any of it. So like why does that matter to me? Right. So after a while of kind of like developing a skin and not really caring about that as much, I love this moment in time. We were running an ad, I think, on a video on Instagram or something. And I woke up that morning and saw in real time an argument happen between two accounts that I don't know on different sides of the world, arguing over whether or not like our video was good. And that took me out of it a little bit to be like, just make what you're going to make. There's going to be people that don't like it and there's going to be people that love it. And if you like it, don't get a big head. Just like what you do and keep doing that.
Yeah. Stay humble. Stay humble.
People are always going to talk shit. There's just no way to prevent it. So
yeah,
just do what you do.
Yeah.
We will withdraw the Lester Bang questions now. I'm going to ask.
That was fun.
Yeah, I like that. That was cool.
I did it with Robert Christgau too. And if you know Robert Christgau, he's like,
fancy pants.
Yes, and he shows it. Read one review of his, but don't do it without access to a dictionary.
Ooh. SAT words.
Very much so. Have you guys noticed anything interesting or unexpected in ways that your music has impacted your listeners?
For me personally, you never know who's hearing your music, and you never know how they're perceiving it, or how it's connecting with them. And for me, and sorry if this is the same answer you would give, Amanda, we in 2019 we threw a tour together to go to Japan, and we kind of did it ourselves. We worked with Inter Idoru Management over in Tokyo, and they helped us get over there and book some shows. And when you go over there to another part of the world that doesn't really speak your language, or both parties don't speak the same language, really, I do my best at Japanese as best as possible. The first night we get there, our first show is at this punk rock club in Tokyo, in Koenji, I think. And the other bands were unbelievably good. We saw them during sound check, and they destroyed. Like, they were incredible. And we're this punky pop, punky punchy band from New York, and we're like, oh, we're gonna get eaten alive. And we got on stage, and the music connected with the people there immediately. Like, I had this big dude with like a big pink mohawk, like big Japanese guy, big pink mohawk, just screaming in my face, second song in. And it was one of those things where it was just like, oh, wow, I guess music kind of is this kind of agent of communication that we can connect with people on the other side of the world. And the impact.
They knew when the Hays were. They knew when we have
but
a lot of call and answer stuff, and they jumped on board immediately.
All over it. And by the second time through each chorus, the room already knew it. And it was weird. It was a humbling experience because it makes the world feel so much smaller. But at the same time, it was like, it was reassuring that, like, oh, we're okay. I guess we're doing something right. And I don't know if I would say that was odd or different, but it definitely was a unique thing. So that when we went back to Japan in 2023, we already had like a fan base, and we were doing this kind of official, like, headlining tour. We went the second time. So that first show in Japan at a place called 20,000 Volts is probably, for me, one of the most memorable, important shows of my life, because it was a show that made us understand that we have this incredible tool that we can communicate with people through all over the world.
Yeah.
That's for me. That's my thing. And it was a lot of fun too. And the bands were so good. It was so good.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I had a thought in my head, but I've been trying this thing, or I've been trying to be more present. And when I'm more present, sometimes those thoughts go out of my head because I'm listening to what's happening. But I would 100% agree. Like, going there and not knowing what we were gonna experience, what we were going to see, where we were gonna go. Like, we got a little bit of information, but we don't know the size of the places really. We don't know who's it. And it was such a life-changing experience, honestly, not just changing how, I don't know. It was just, it's such a wild experience that's changed how I view every other show, really, and every other new experience with a new person, because that was the most out of my ordinary realm that I've ever had up to that point. And it was amazing. So it's opened this new, like, hey, just step into anything and just look at it with the best thing that could happen. And it really could. And I will say, like, that was a moment for me. And also, like, with the Return of Space Girl album release show.
Yeah, the album release show for that was
awesome. That was like a home version of that, where we had the album released for like a week, and we were like, okay, we're playing at our local, like, home, which is Mr. Beery's. It's a place on Long Island that supports original music that's been there for like 30 years. It's family run. It's multi-generational. We love it. And we did our first album release there. The album was out for a week, and the crowd was packed, and people already knew it.
Yeah, they knew
people already knew the album. Mm-hmm. So that was also, like, moments like that, to go back to a previous point, to never give me a big head. Mm-hmm. And I feel like it's very easy for that too, to be like, oh, we're great. This is great. Look how great we are. I take pride in it. I'm happy that's how people reacted to it, but I am equally and will always be in awe of the crowd. We're doing what we're going to do. We're having fun. We're hoping that you guys like it. We're hoping that it transcends something and then relates to whatever you're going through, whatever you need to hear at the time, whatever it is. I think that, like, we could get to a point where knock on wood and fingers crossed and wildest dreams, we're in Madison Square Garden one day. I will be on that stage. If that ever, that's a pipe dream that every musician in New York at least has. But I don't think I could ever come at that from a place of we're so great. I think I would just be standing there looking at the crowd and being in awe of them. That's something that tour taught me. That's something that show taught me, was just like, I am there for the people in that room, and that energy for me is everything. It's humbling. It's full of growth. It's wild, and that's what music can do.
Music is a little bit like love. Well, it's a lot like love in that it transcends language barriers, emotional barriers. I mean, it just transcends everything when it's right.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
Good on you.
Also, I'm not sure if the hat's a giveaway, but I am a Diet Coke enthusiast.
Oh, no, I'm a huge Diet Coke.
I'm not sure if that's a hobby. Kind of.
It can be.
It can be. There's been I don't know if you're encountering the same thing. There's a run on Diet Coke. It's hard. It's not hard to get, but there are some places I go to and they're just like completely out of it. I'm like, how are you out of Diet Coke? It's the single most important beverage in the world. Last question for you guys. If you had one abandoned album to name by an artist, what might that be? Not together individually, but an album that you think people might not know about, should know about, people forgot about.
Oh, okay.
Ooh.
Oh, that's really cool. So an album that was released.
Yep.
So I just want to make sure I get all my parameters correctly. I'm not sure if this necessarily counts, but I'm a big fan of the band Rancid.
Okay.
One of my favorite bands. And they put out an album in 1998 called Life Won't Wait. And I love that record.
Okay.
And I don't know if it's a forgotten album, or abandoned, but it's definitely not an album of theirs that pops up when people talk about them right away. Right. It's a record that, like, they'll talk about And Out Come the Wolves, or they'll talk about Indestructible, or they'll talk about Let's Go, right? So those are the records that usually come up when people talk about them right away. But Life Won't Wait is it's a record. It's got a heavy influence from ska and reggae, and obviously Rancid's brand of whatever punk is. And I really love that record, and I listen to it like start to finish a few times a year, and it's one of my favorites.
That qualifies, absolutely.
Oh, cool.
Amanda?
Very cool. What about you, Amanda?
There are no rules, so.
Yeah, because I don't know if mine is necessarily an abandoned album, because it does have some like big hits off of it, but it is an album for myself that I often forget. And I feel like when questions like this get brought up, like I remember and I go back and I listen to it because it's important to me. And I bring it up kind of a bit, but the Goo Goo Dolls' Dizzy Up the Girl was the first album I ever bought for myself. And it's that, but also I think the one my dad gave me a CD that I guess he's had for like the last 15 years. That was like, oh, I just found this. And I was looking for the title now because it's abandoned in my head. I don't think it was Superstar Car Wash, and it was one before that.
Hold Me Up.
It might have been a boy named Goo, but that's the one that broke them.
I'm a big Goo Goo Dolls fan for a certain block of time, up through Dizzy Up the Girl.
I remember buying it thinking that it meant something like really dirty, and being afraid to like tell the clerk at Tower Records, like, I'm looking for this album. It's called Dizzy Up. And they were like, we got you. I was, but I listened, I destroyed it, the CD. I listened to it so many times, and I feel like, I don't know. I feel like in modern conversation, for me, they don't get brought up enough. I feel like they're a great band, especially in that time. So it's an abandoned album because I don't think it gets brought up as much as I would like it to, because it's great, and it's almost, for me, it's a little time capsule.
Yeah. No quarrel for me. That's a great record. I have blown past my time with you guys. I thank you for sticking around and playing the game.
All good.
I wish you both much success going forward.
You too, man. Thank you.
And I hope you make it up to Connecticut. I know it's
actually it's in the works. So
oh good.
Yeah, we might be, nothing's solidified yet, but we will be in Boston on July 24th. So there might be a show in New Haven on July 25th. So
I hope so.
We're working on it.
It's right along the corner.
Yeah,
you know,
exactly.
If you're going between Boston, if you've got one in New York.
That's the whole plan. It's to Boston, Connecticut, New York. So
Well, again, Amanda, Mike, thank you so much.
Thanks, Keith.
And I look forward to seeing you guys soon.
Yeah.
Right.
We'll
Same
keep in
here.
touch.
This was really fun.
This is a really good interview. So we really like
Thank
it.
you. I'm glad. I love talking with you guys. And you make it easy.
Well, thanks.
And that's my favorite color green behind you there. So kudos on the decor.
Well, thanks. Thank you.
The song you heard in the intro to this episode was Hype Me Up by I Am Daylight. If you'd like to hear the episode with Bad Mary songs, please tune in to our podcast episode. You can find it wherever you get your favorite podcasts. Many thanks to Amanda and Mike for stopping by Thunderlove Studio for a chat. You can stream the entire Bad Mary catalog wherever you stream your favorite music.
This episode of Abandoned Albums was written and produced by Keith R. Higgins. The show was recorded at Thunderlove Studio, where it was engineered by
Daphne Morris,
with help from
Penetration.
Abandoned Albums was edited by
Vic Titball.
Original music by Mike Pellegrino.
If you like what you've heard, please remember to subscribe and leave us a rating. It helps other people find the podcast. Thanks for listening.
Grazie.
Bailey Leaf,
Rob Janicki, Mike Pellegrino, Thurina Vella,
Eric Beatner, S.W. Loudon, Ronnie Barnett,
Michael Janicki, Peyton Janicki, and our executive producer.
This is Thunderlove.
Abandoned Albums receives funding from Damon Pharmaceuticals, the makers of Ben Affleck. Ben Affleck is the only chewable tablet made to combat stomach unease associated with mediocrity. Taken daily, Ben Affleck can help combat explosive gastrointestinal shame. You can find a multitude of flavors in the incontinence section of your local pharmacy. Ben Affleck, save yourself the embarrassment.
The side effects include dry mouth, headache, anal leakage, muscle soreness, bad decisions, gender confusion, constipation, evil spirit possession, and banality. Use only as directed.
And now, until we meet again next time, I remain as always, obediently yours.
Abandoned Albums is a production of Paw Print Media.
And now, a word from our sponsor.